Hi, I'm Brenda Such. Welcome to COIPcast, where we talk about new, trending, or just fascinating topics and technologies in online education. For anyone teaching in online education, you may be assigned courses to develop. As you begin to develop a course, you might think to yourself that there is no way I can be the sole lecturer of the diverse content in this course. What do? You may then phone a friend, you reach out to a colleague at the university, or find other subject matter experts in the field. In GEO 3454, People and Plagues, Geography Associate Instructional Professor Dr. Gabriela Hammerlink had a similar experience and coordinated with other faculty to record different lectures for the course. She joins us to tell us more about her story. Thank you for joining us, Gabby.
Thanks for having me, Brenda.
So our show has 3 segments where we like to get to know your thoughts and experiences related to the past, present, and potential future aspects to online education. So in our first segment, Digital Origin Story, or DOS, please tell us how you were assigned courses like Peoples and Plagues, and what made you first decide that you wanted others to be brought into the production of the course.
Sure. So I taught Peoples and Plagues starting in 2019 when I was a postdoc.
Okay.
And I was actually working with Dr. Sadie Ryan, who's my co-instructor for putting this class online. She's the one that designed the class originally, but as a research faculty, she doesn't have a very high teaching load, and we needed to be able to offer the class every semester because it had so much interest from students. And so I was assigned this class, and then when I joined the faculty, I continued teaching the class, and we sort of go back and forth teaching it every fall and spring so that it can be offered every semester.
Okay. So as you were saying that she didn't have much time to teach, brought you in, how did those conversations go in the beginning? I'm sure in the beginning you might have been like, okay, well, whatever you have, I'll teach, or
absolutely.
Yeah. And then how does that kind of conversation then evolve to be like, oh, now that I've taught it?
So my background is in education as well as biology and math. And now I work in a geography department. And so I was able to, Sadie was gracious enough to give me all of her materials at that first time that I taught. And then as I got more comfortable with the content, I was able to bring in some of the other pedagogical techniques that I have training in to make the class a little bit more my own. And then Sadie and I, of course, still collaborate very closely together in teaching this class. And so we've been able to really mesh those things together to make a new and improved version of the class experience for all of our students.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the first part is meant to be a little bit shorter. So just to kind of get the background, but we can deep dive now into what you all do now.
Sure.
So our segment Bits and Bytes is where we look at the present. What are some of the present benefits and challenges that you have experienced when you coordinate for work in these online courses?
We're seeing a lot more interest in the online version of the class, which is really, really exciting for us. And it's offering us a chance to teach in the different modality, have a slightly different class experience with those assessments than with the in-person version. But we want to make sure that any student that takes this class is having a really worthwhile, a deep learning experience, and making sure that we can sort of replicate the learning that's happening in the in-person class so that the online students aren't missing out on anything, and also vice versa.
Can you give us like an example of maybe an assignment or some type of experience that obviously it's not total one-to-one, but like as much as you're trying to make it one-to-one?
Sure. So our in-person class, one of the things that we love about the in-person class is student-led discussions, where we have our students read a set of foundational literature pieces, and then they develop a student-led discussion. So they present those articles, do a quick summary because everybody should have read them, and then guide the discussion. And it's so great to see the students picking apart those articles, finding the similarities, and connecting it back to their lived experiences, but also other course content. We wanted to try and do something similar with the online version, but having an asynchronous student-led discussion, we couldn't figure out a great way to do that, to replicate it. So something else that we've learned from our Gator evals with the in-person class is that the students want newer literature.
Okay.
right? They're recognizing that some of these foundational pieces are old.
Sure.
Right? They're a couple decades old.
Yeah.
It's too old.
Yeah.
And so we're having our students in the asynchronous version read the foundational work, but then find a newer article from the last few years, summarize it, present it in a discussion board to their classmates, and connect it to the course material, the lectures and the foundational work and so on. And then their response to a classmate is to read the other person's article that they found and make those connections across the newer literature as well, so that we can really see how science builds on that foundational work.
I like how you all have designed the reciprocation so that it's not just I did so much heavy lifting in my initial post, but then the follow-up is maybe a little more fluff, but when they have to see something else, they can articulate more.
Yeah, that's our hope, that we can get some conversation going to find those connections, because that is what we as instructors love to see happening in person during those student-led discussions. And so I really hope that we can maintain that momentum in the asynchronous version as well.
With Peoples and Plagues, can you tell us a little bit more of, sorry, y'all. I know it's about peoples and plagues, but maybe a little bit more of what that is.
Sure.
And then also how many students are in your in-person course versus your online course?
Sure. So I'll start with the second question. We typically have between 15 to 30 students in an in-person class. And right now, already for next fall, we have 40 students signed up for the asynchronous version, and I've capped it there as our pilot to make sure that I can handle it, that we've worked out all the bugs. So I'm really excited about that. The class itself is a survey class. So this is one of we like to call it our gateway class into the medical geography certificate, the minor, and the major. And so we get a lot of students from a lot of different disciplines coming in. And so the survey class, we've covered it in 3 different units, what I like to call the classics. So we've got our big historic diseases, plague, which is an actual disease. Even though it's peoples and plagues, there's a single disease called plague. And then things like the poxes and tuberculosis and so on. And then we cover, so that's our first unit. The second unit are zoonotic diseases. So we cover some wildlife diseases. We've got HIV, we've got the coronaviruses and so on. And then where Dr. Ryan and I have our hopes and joys is in the third unit, which is VBDs and VHFs, which is vector-borne diseases and viral hemorrhagic fevers.
Okay. I'm so glad you said those instead of me. Yes.
So both of us have studied vector-borne diseases now. Yeah. So we get really excited when we get to that last unit of the semester.
I can tell. So can you, a little bit more of another step back? Because I think when we talk about geography, my geography experience growing up has been
states and capitals.
You got it. And then I had a map, lots of maps. So then maybe the audience can hear a little bit more about the expansiveness.
What geography is?
Yes. What is
geography? Is everything.
Yes.
That is what we like to say in our department. So we do a lot of different things in the geography department here at UF. We have our medical geography, which is what I lecture in, and that is the spread of diseases and health-related issues through populations and across landscapes. We also think, so we can look backwards in time, what's happened in the past, and reconstruct some of those patterns of disease through our population. But we can also look forward and think, what is this disease risk going to be? What's this health issue going to look like in the population or across the landscape in the future? And we do that using climate projections and best and worst case scenarios. And we can take that information and make recommendations for policies or interventions and things like that. So it can be a really powerful tool. And of course, we have other aspects of geography. Maps. can't get past this. So we have a new meteorology degree, which is very exciting. So we've brought on some new degrees there. We have urban geography. We've got economic geography. We have conservation and land use change specialists in our department. We've got a little bit of everything. So we like to pepper it in throughout all of the lectures and say, if this is really exciting to you, this analysis or this visualization, there are other geography classes that you can take.
Right.
And then your instructor will tell you more about them.
No, that's actually related to more directly to what we were talking about with, okay, how do I manage this content myself? When do I get help? How do I ask for help? And seeing that because geography is so expansive that in different content areas you can be like, okay, at this juncture you can hear more about this other course. Right. So that's actually a really nice way to do that. So how do you keep track of it then? I think like how many courses there are, and then who can be directed to what, and educate people to know that these are the other courses. How do you all coordinate that?
We have a mid-sized department, I want to say. We've got just over 20 faculty now, but we have a lot of newer faculty. So since I started in 2019, our faculty has really, really grown, which means that we have a lot of new and exciting classes that are coming online. And so our department as a whole has made a really concerted effort about advertising. So we are hoping to grow both butts and seats for enrollment for our classes, but also in our certificates, in our minors, and in the major. A big goal of lots of departments, I'm sure. But part of that is doing this sort of targeted advertising. And as we have taken on course revamps and redoing or updating the curriculum for courses, as a whole department, we've been very conscious about trying to put some of this in.
It just sounds exciting that you seem to be a part of a department that people are excited. There is that variety of courses, and you can work together to have these certificates, these new experiences for the students. That's exciting. So we know sometimes it's what you draw in life, and sometimes we get very nice experiences like that. But if someone who's listening and is like, to be super exaggerating, I'm the only one who cares in my department about geography, like, why would you encourage them?
I think that if you are excited about it, you can get a lot done. And so some of it is the medical geography faculty. There's 4 of us, core faculty, but we have other of our colleagues that do a little bit of med geo in their classes. And so we've sort of like looped them in to our little family. And that's great for both us in terms of like our teaching load, but also for the students at getting different voices, right? I'm teaching faculty, so I teach a lot more classes on average in a year than my colleagues do. And so if a student is really excited about medical geography, but they don't like the way that I teach, that's not super great for their future experience in the program. And so being able to have different classes offered by our different faculty, taught by our fantastic graduate students as their TAs, it opens up a lot of extra doors. But I'm super lucky to have a really supportive department in this way.
So we'll go into our third segment, which is our last one, Tech Forward. From your experiences and coordination for the current course and maybe some of your past courses, what do you think future courses might look like? What do you think maybe future coordination might look like? I know AI is also a hot topic too. How would that impact things? Where are we going?
So I've been making these recommendations to my colleagues of using this time as both an advertisement, but also with that forward thinking of, are you going to be the only person that teaches this class moving forward? And if not, is it perhaps in our department's best interest to have a couple of people be represented in the lectures?
That's a good point.
So that's one thing that Dr. Ryan and I were really cognizant of, trying to go halvesies on the lecture recordings, because it's a little less awkward then for students.
Who is this person?
Right?
The entire course. Right.
Like, I have only been seeing Dr. Ryan in all of these recordings, and then there's someone called Dr. Hamerlink who's grading all of my assignments.
Right.
It can be a little awkward for the students.
I thought that this was her.
Right? Yeah. And so that is one of the big reasons why, for Peoples and Plagues in particular, why we wanted to have that equal representation. But we also have a couple of guest lectures from our other medical geography faculty to really just highlight the applications of MedGeo and that the things that you're learning about in this class, we're actually doing for our research. And so we have Dr. Mao and Dr. Blackburn, two of our other medical geography core faculty who have given lectures and guest lectures for this class. And so that's one of the big things that I've been recommending to my colleagues is thinking about who else are we planning to have teach this class? If it's a graduate student, we're going to pass this off to have a graduate student instructor. Can we build something into the orientation module or into other pieces that say, don't email me, but email your instructor if you've got questions, that sort of thing.
No, that's really encouraging because I can tell someone that and I think they're like, okay, but to have someone who lives that, who breathes that, experiences that, and knows that that's the benefit for the long run is like super helpful.
Yes. Yeah. And although we love coming in here and recording with you guys, you've got a very jam-packed schedule. So if we can make that class have a little bit more longevity,
right.
It would be ideal for our department.
That's right. So you had mentioned that AI has been something that you all have had to consider. How does that impact like your course presently and like how you're even thinking about the curriculum moving forward?
Yeah, I've attended a lot of trainings with the Center for Teaching Excellence and CITT, and they're fantastic. Also reading the literature about how to make a good assessment that makes students think critically in a way that AI cannot yet. A little scary if we move into that space.
And that would be right.
But right now, the way that we've structured our assessments, those prompts that we're having our students respond to, we're really hopeful that they are at the present sort of AI proof, but also just explaining to the students the whole point of the assessment, right? It's not just busy work that we need you to read all these articles and then we need you to find something new. There's a purpose for it. And explaining that rationale, the method behind the madness of the assignments has worked very well for me in the past. You're always going to get some students that just don't buy into it. And that's fine. I think my job in the classroom, real person, in-person classroom or an asynchronous online classroom is to create a learning environment in which everyone can be successful, but it's the student's responsibility to do the learning. And so just setting the stage for them to do that learning. And then they've got to take it that last step.
So Gabby, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us as well. Take care.